Hey everyone, and welcome back. Have you ever wondered why we're always told to embrace challenges? Like, is it just one of those motivational poster cliches, or is there actually something deeper there?
Well, that's what we're diving into today. We're going to
Huh.
be exploring the idea that challenges, especially in learning, are actually like these powerful opportunities in disguise.
Hmm.
And why just like sitting back and avoiding things, it's not really a good option.
Yeah.
Okay, so to really unpack this, the research we're looking at today focuses on how turning those challenges, especially in learning, into opportunities. It can be like incredibly rewarding. And honestly, some of what we found is pretty surprising.
Yeah, for sure.
One of the things that really jumped out at me was this idea that like struggling with something can actually make you more confident. It seems kind of counterintuitive, right? It really
Mhm.
does. But the key here is realizing that it's not the struggle itself that like builds confidence. It's really what we learn from pushing through it. When we overcome some obstacle, we get that sense of accomplishment, that, hey, I did that feeling. And that feeling is like directly tied to building self-efficacy, that belief in our own ability to succeed.
I see.
It's kind of like leveling up in a video game, right?
Yeah.
You get those experience points, and then you have the confidence to go tackle even bigger challenges.
Okay, yeah, I like that video game analogy. It definitely makes it a lot easier to grasp. Speaking of grasping things,
hmm
one of the sources had this really great example of how this works in action with students who are learning math.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Students who are struggling with math at first, they often feel frustrated, obviously, but when they stick with it, they end up getting a much deeper understanding of the subject. And they might even discover some new interests they didn't even know they had.
Oh, wow.
It's almost like all that struggling opens up these new pathways in their brain and
Yeah.
then leads them to these really unexpected places.
So it's not just about becoming like a math whiz.
Huh.
It's about that whole journey and all the skills that you pick up along the way.
Yeah.
Which leads us to another point that kept coming up, the idea that challenges actually fuel creativity and innovation. It's kind of like a mental obstacle course, right? You're
Yeah.
forced to figure out new paths to get to where you want to go.
Yeah, for sure. And it's those moments when you feel stuck that the real learning and innovation happens. A perfect example is coding. When you hit a roadblock in coding, you're forced to problem solve. You have to debug, you have to try all these different approaches until you find a solution.
Yeah.
And this whole process really requires you to think outside the box, to be super resourceful.
That makes total sense. But how does this apply to like everyday life outside of a classroom setting? I mean, we're not always learning new subjects or writing code.
You're right, we're not. But the cool thing is that those skills we develop from those experiences, they're transferable. The research really emphasizes how important resilience is. Learning to adapt, adjust our strategies, and keep going, even when things are tough. That equips us to handle stress, anxiety, and just stay positive in any difficult situation, not just academic ones.
So it's like challenges are building this mental muscle that we can then like flex in any area of life.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not just about passing some test or finishing a project. It's about developing this mindset that can handle, whatever comes your way.
That's a great way to put it. And these sources we're looking at, they actually delve into specific examples of how taking on challenges in math, languages, and computing, they can have this really profound impact on our lives.
I'm curious about that. Let's dive into those a bit. Starting with math, how does like wrestling with equations and theorems really benefit us down the line?
It all comes down to problem solving. Math helps you hone these critical thinking skills that apply way beyond just, the classroom. Like you need those analytical and logical thinking abilities, whether you're an engineer designing a bridge or you're just trying to figure out the best way to get to work.
I see.
It's not about memorizing formulas. It's about learning to think strategically and solve problems effectively.
Right. Okay. What about languages? The research pointed to some pretty incredible opportunities that open up when you overcome those challenges of learning a new language.
Yeah,
I've always wanted to learn another language, but it just feels so daunting.
it definitely can be, but the rewards are just huge. Learning a new language, it enhances your communication skills, it opens up doors for travel, work, cultural exchange. It's like this key that unlocks a whole new world of experiences and connections.
Yeah, that's so important, especially in today's world where everything is so interconnected.
It really is. And it's deeper than that, too.
Yeah.
It helps you understand different cultures and perspectives on a much deeper level, which leads to more empathy and global awareness.
Oh, that's cool.
Plus, having language skills is super valuable in the job market. It makes you more competitive and adaptable.
So it's a win-win. Personal enrichment and like a professional advantage.
Yeah.
Okay, what about computing? I know it's becoming more and more important in our digital age, But for someone who's not really tech savvy, learning to code can seem super intimidating.
It can seem that way, yeah. But again, the rewards are immense. These sources really emphasized how mastering those computing skills, it opens up all these career opportunities like software development, cybersecurity, data analysis, and even beyond specific careers, it gives people the power to create innovative technologies and solutions, which helps drive progress in all these different industries.
So it's not just about using technology, it's about being able to shape and influence it.
Exactly. When you embrace those challenges of learning computing, you're equipped with the tools you need to navigate the digital world and shape it, which is super important in a world where technology is constantly evolving. It allows us to be active participants and not just passive consumers.
Wow. This is honestly making me completely rethink how I approach challenges. Instead of seeing them as these like obstacles, maybe I should start viewing them as opportunities for growth and discovery. But the big question is, how do we actually do that? What are some actionable strategies for turning challenges into opportunities?
That's a great question. And luckily, the research actually provides some really helpful strategies. One of the key takeaways is to reframe obstacles. So instead of seeing them as threats to like our ego or our well-being, we should try to view them as chances to learn and grow.
So it's really about shifting our perspective. Instead of saying, I can't do this,
Ah,
we should be saying, I'm going to learn how to do this.
exactly. It's all about embracing a growth mindset. Another important strategy is to break down these really complex tasks into smaller, manageable chunks. I mean, when we're faced with a challenge that seems huge, it can be completely overwhelming.
Oh, yeah.
But if we break it down into smaller, more achievable steps, it suddenly becomes much less intimidating.
Oh, that's a great tip. It's kind of like climbing a mountain, right?
Yeah.
It's much easier to just focus on getting to the next base camp
Yeah,
than to be constantly looking up at the summit the whole time.
exactly. It's all about breaking it down and then celebrating those small victories along the way. And speaking of celebrating, the sources also emphasize the importance of self-compassion. You know, it's so easy to get down on ourselves when we're struggling, but we need to be kind to ourselves. Remember that persistence is a journey, not a destination.
Right.
We need to be our own cheerleaders, not our own worst critics.
That's so true. And sometimes we need a little help from our friends too, right?
Hmm.
The research also encourages us to look for different perspectives and resources when we're facing a challenge.
Absolutely. That might involve talking to experts or peers or seeking out advice from mentors who have totally different backgrounds. The point is to step outside of our own perspective for a minute and consider different approaches to the challenge. It's like tapping into this collective wisdom and then using that to find the best path forward.
That makes a lot of sense.
And one final strategy they highlighted is to foster a culture of like experimentation and risk-taking.
Ooh, that sounds a little scary. What do they mean by that?
Well, it's not about being reckless. It's about encouraging ourselves and others to explore new ideas, take calculated risks, and then learn from any failures.
So it's about embracing the unknown and being okay with, making mistakes along the way.
Exactly. It's about seeing failure as a chance for learning and growth, not as some kind of defeat. And this actually ties back to the question of whether just being passive and avoiding things are those really good alternatives to actually facing challenges head on.
That's an interesting connection. How so?
Well, think about it. If we're always scared of making mistakes or failing, we're way less likely to try new things, to push ourselves outside of our comfort zone. And that can lead to just like being stuck, both
Oh.
personally and professionally.
So by avoiding challenges, we're actually kind of limiting our own potential. We're choosing to stay comfortable and familiar instead of choosing the possibility of growth and discovery.
Exactly. The research really emphasizes that challenges, especially when it comes to learning, they're not things to be avoided. We should be embracing them as opportunities for personal and professional development.
That's a pretty powerful statement. It really challenges that whole idea that we should always try to take the easiest path.
And it's backed up by research on neuroplasticity. Our brains are always changing and adapting in response to new experiences and challenges. So when we embrace challenges, we're basically creating these new neural pathways, which makes our brains more adaptable and resilient.
Oh, okay. So it's like we're giving our brains a workout, right?
Yeah.
Making them stronger and more flexible.
Exactly. And the more we challenge ourselves, the better we become at adapting to new situations and overcoming obstacles.
I see. That makes me think about those specific challenges people often face when it comes to learning new things. The sources touched on some common ones, like that fear of failure, lack of motivation, and what they call imposter syndrome. These can be like huge roadblocks.
They absolutely can. But these sources offer some really practical advice for overcoming those obstacles. For example, when it comes to fear of failure, they suggest reframing it. So instead of seeing it as something to be ashamed of or embarrassed about, think of it as an opportunity to learn and grow.
So it's about changing how we talk to ourselves about failure.
Exactly. And when it comes to lacking motivation, they recommend breaking down those complex tasks into smaller chunks, setting goals that are actually achievable, and then celebrating those little wins along the way. It's a lot easier to stay motivated when you can see yourself making progress and you feel that sense of accomplishment.
Yeah, that makes sense.
What about imposter syndrome? Have you ever experienced that?
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's that feeling that you're not good enough, that you don't belong, even when you have evidence that you do. It can be really tough to deal with.
It can, and it's more common than people realize. To deal with that imposter syndrome, the sources suggest practicing self-compassion, finding those supportive networks, and really focusing on your strengths and your accomplishments. It's important to remember that we're all works in progress, and it's totally okay to ask for help and support along the way.
That's such a helpful reminder. It's so easy to get caught up in comparing ourselves to others and then feeling like we're not measuring up.
Mm.
But we really need to be our own champions.
We do. And beyond those individual challenges, the research also talks about obstacles that are related to language barriers and cultural differences. They suggest things like seeking out language learning resources, talking to native speakers, and really exploring those cultural nuances. Those are incredibly valuable tips for anyone trying to navigate those complexities.
Yeah, for sure. This has been such an eye-opening deep dive into the value of challenges. It's clear that they're not something to be afraid of or avoid, but actually something to embrace as opportunities for growth, learning, and even innovation. But what about those times when the challenges feel like too much, like they're impossible to overcome, when it feels like giving up is the only option?
Those are the moments when it's especially important to remember all the strategies we've been talking about, reframing our perspective, breaking things down into smaller steps, seeking out support, celebrating those small wins. All of those things can help us maintain our momentum even when things get really tough.
It's like we've been given this incredible toolkit for navigating challenges. It's up to us to actually use it. But how do we know if we're choosing the right challenges? Is there such a thing as a bad challenge?
That's a great question. I think it's important to make a distinction between challenges that push us outside of our comfort zone and those that are just totally overwhelming or even harmful.
So it's about finding that balance, where we're challenged enough to grow, but not so overwhelmed that we just give up.
Exactly. It's about being aware of our own limits and then choosing challenges that line up with our values and our goals. And sometimes it's about recognizing when a particular challenge isn't working for us anymore and having the courage to step away from it.
It takes a lot of self-awareness and honesty.
It does. But it's also about recognizing that challenges aren't meant to be endured forever. Sometimes the most valuable lesson we can learn from a challenge is that it's time to move on to something else.
Hmm. That's an interesting perspective. It's not about forcing ourselves to the point of burnout, but about finding that balance between pushing ourselves
Mhm.
and knowing when to rest and regroup.
Absolutely. And that brings us back to the importance of self-compassion. We need to be kind to ourselves throughout this whole process. Remember that growth and learning are lifelong journeys. They're not destinations.
This has been such an insightful conversation. I'm leaving this deep dive feeling energized and empowered to actually embrace those challenges in my own life.
That's great to hear. Remember, challenges are a fact of life. They're going to happen. It's how we choose to approach them that really makes all the difference. By choosing to see challenges as opportunities for growth, we open ourselves up to so many more possibilities. We develop resilience, creativity, and a sense of purpose, things that you just can't find in a life that's all about ease and avoiding things.
And who knows? Maybe that challenge we've been putting off could actually lead us to something amazing.
That's the best part. We never know what we're truly capable of until we push past our comfort zones.
So to wrap up this awesome deep dive, I think the biggest takeaway for me is that challenges aren't the enemy. They're actually our secret weapon for growth and unlocking our full potential. And it's not about purposely seeking out hardship. It's about recognizing that challenges are just part of life. And if we embrace them, we can actually transform them into opportunities for learning, growth, and yeah, even joy.
I completely agree. The evidence is clear. Embracing challenges, especially when it comes to learning, is how we unlock our full potential and how we end up living more fulfilling lives. It's all about changing how we see things and looking at those obstacles as opportunities in disguise.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you learned something new today and that you feel inspired to tackle those challenges with a brand new perspective. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.
It seems like we've circled all the way back around to that idea that challenges aren't actually the enemy. They're more like the key to, unlocking growth and reaching our full potential.
It really is a completely different way of looking at challenges than how we usually see them. Instead of trying to avoid them, we should lean into them and use them as stepping stones to becoming, more resilient, creative, more capable versions of ourselves. And the really exciting thing is that this applies to everyone, no matter what stage of life you're in. Like whether you're a student trying to figure out some tough subject, a professional hitting a roadblock in their career, or just someone wanting to learn something new. These principles still apply.
Absolutely. These principles we've been talking about, they're universal. Embracing challenges, looking at things differently, breaking things down into smaller steps, getting support from others, celebrating the small wins. Those are all strategies that can help us deal with any challenge that comes our way.
It's like we've been given this incredible map for turning obstacles into opportunities, and it's up to us to actually use it. But I think it's important to say that taking that first step can be pretty scary. It's easy to get stuck in that cycle of avoiding things and feel totally overwhelmed by even thinking about facing a challenge head on.
You're right, and that's where self-compassion comes in again. It's about treating ourselves kindly and recognizing that it's okay to feel a little hesitant or unsure. We don't have to jump right into the deep end. We can start small, take those baby steps, and slowly build our confidence.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's not about comparing ourselves to other people or thinking that we need to change overnight. It's about figuring out what pace works for us and respecting our own individual journey.
Exactly. And remember, embracing challenges doesn't mean we have to do it all alone. Having support from others, like friends, family, mentors, even online communities, can make a world of difference. Having that support system can give you encouragement, keep you accountable, and provide a fresh perspective when you need it most.
It's true. Sometimes just talking things through with someone else can give us clarity and the motivation to keep going.
Yeah, it can also help us challenge those negative thoughts we have about ourselves and replace them with beliefs that actually empower us. Remember, our thoughts and beliefs have a huge impact on our reality. If we keep telling ourselves we can't do something, we're way more likely to give up before we even get started. But if we focus on believing in our own abilities and surround ourselves with people who believe in us too, we're way more likely to keep going and achieve what we set out to do.
This has been such an inspiring conversation. I feel like I'm walking away from this deep dive feeling energized and ready to take on the challenges in my own life.
I'm so glad to hear that. Just remember, challenges are an unavoidable part of life. It's how we decide to approach them that really matters. By embracing challenges as chances for growth, we open ourselves up to a world of possibilities. We develop resilience, creativity, and a sense of purpose. And those are things you can't find if you just try to make life easy and avoid anything difficult.
And who knows, maybe the challenge we have been putting off might lead us to something truly incredible.
That's the beauty of it, right?
Right.
We never truly know what we're capable of until we step outside of our comfort zone.
So to wrap up this amazing deep dive, the biggest takeaway for me is that challenges aren't our enemies. They're actually our secret weapon for growth and unlocking our full potential. And it's not about going out and searching for hardship for no reason. It's about recognizing that challenges are a natural part of life. And when we embrace them, we can turn them into chances for learning, growth, and yes, even joy.
I couldn't agree more. All the evidence points to the same thing. Embracing challenges, especially when it comes to learning, is the way to unlock our full potential and live richer, more fulfilling lives. It's all about changing how we look at things and seeing those obstacles as opportunities in disguise.
Thank you all so much for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you learned something new today and that you feel inspired to tackle those challenges with a fresh new outlook. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep. It really does feel like we've come full circle. Back to that idea that challenges, they're not actually the enemy. They're more like the key to unlocking growth and helping us reach our full potential.
That's a great way to put it. It's definitely a shift in how we usually think about challenges, right? Instead of trying to steer clear of them, we should be leaning in, using them as those stepping stones to becoming more resilient, more creative, just more capable versions of ourselves.
And the cool thing is that this is true for anyone, no matter where they are in life. If you're a student wrestling with a tough subject, or you're dealing with a career obstacle, or even if you're just trying to learn a new skill, these principles, they still hold up.
Absolutely. Everything we've talked about today, these principles are universal. Embracing those challenges, changing our perspective, breaking things into smaller chunks, finding people who support us, celebrating those little victories. Those are all strategies that can help us navigate any challenge that comes our way.
Yeah, it's like we've been given this amazing roadmap for turning obstacles into opportunities. But we have to be the ones to actually use it. I do think it's important to acknowledge that taking that first step, it can be a little scary. It's easy to get stuck in that cycle of avoiding things,
Yep.
and feeling totally overwhelmed by the idea of actually facing a challenge head on.
You're absolutely right. And that's where being kind to ourselves, that self-compassion comes in again. It's about recognizing that it's okay to feel hesitant or unsure. We don't have to jump right into the deep end.
Yeah.
We can start small, take those baby steps, and slowly build up our confidence over time.
That's a really good point. It's not about comparing ourselves to other people or expecting to change everything overnight. It's about finding a pace that works for us and respecting our own journey.
Exactly. And remember, we don't have to face these challenges completely alone. Having that support network of friends, family, mentors, even those online communities, it can make a world of difference. Having people there to support you can give you that encouragement, that accountability, and even offer a new perspective when you need it most.
That's so true. Sometimes just talking things out with someone, it can help us see things more clearly and find that motivation to keep going.
It can also help us challenge those negative thoughts that we tend to have about ourselves and replace them with beliefs that actually empower us. Remember, our thoughts and our beliefs, they really do shape our reality. If we're constantly telling ourselves, I can't do this, we're way more likely to give up before we even start. But if we focus on believing in our own abilities and we surround ourselves with people who believe in us too, we're much more likely to persevere and actually succeed.
This has been such a truly inspiring conversation. I honestly feel like I'm walking away from this deep dive feeling so energized and ready to embrace those challenges in my own life.
That's fantastic to hear. Just remember, challenges, they're a part of life, they're going to happen. It's how we choose to approach them that really matters. When we see challenges as opportunities for growth, we open ourselves up to so many possibilities. We develop resilience, creativity, and a sense of purpose. And those are things you just won't find in a life that's focused on taking the easy route and avoiding anything difficult.
And you know what? Maybe that challenge that we've been putting off, maybe it could lead us to something truly amazing.
Exactly. That's the beauty of it, right? We never really know what we're capable of until we push ourselves outside of our comfort zone.
So to really wrap up this incredible deep dive, the biggest takeaway for me is that challenges, they aren't the enemy. They're our secret weapon for growth, for unlocking our full potential. And it's not about purposely seeking out hardship or anything like that. It's about recognizing that challenges, they're a natural part of life. And when we embrace them, we can transform them into opportunities to learn, to grow, and yes, even to experience joy.
I couldn't agree more. Everything we've looked at points to the same conclusion. Embracing challenges, especially those challenges we face when learning, that's how we unlock our true potential. And that's how we live those richer, more fulfilling lives. It all comes down to shifting our perspective, seeing those obstacles as opportunities in disguise.
Thank you all so much for joining us today for this deep dive. We hope you learned something new and feel inspired to take on those challenges with a fresh perspective. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.